This is Uprising. I'm Sonali Kolhatkar. You can now watch Uprising on Free Speech TV, which airs on Dish Network Channel 9415, DirecTV Channel 348, and on hundreds of part-time cable affiliates and on Roku. The January jobs report has revealed that, at least according to conventional yardsticks, the U.S. economy seems to be picking up in pace, leading some to view it as a, quote, jobs machine. More than 700,000 new jobs were added last month, and the ongoing trend of fewer long-term unemployed Americans continued. Jobs were added in a variety of sectors, including retail, healthcare, construction, and manufacturing. Some economists called it the best jobs report since the recession hit. On the international front, financial and political leaders are gathering for the G20 meeting in Istanbul, Turkey. On the agenda is Greece's new government's demand for a renegotiation of its debt obligations. It remains to be seen if the newly elected Syriza party can foment a real revolution in economic policies in Europe. Meanwhile, oil prices all over the world have remained at record lows, mostly as a result of a glut in energy reserves. The ripple effect has been mixed, with energy sector jobs hemorrhaging, while other consumers seeing a form of economic stimulus from the savings from cheap gas. But economies deeply dependent on oil, such as Russia, are suffering severely. Joining us to make sense of the big economic picture is the acclaimed Dr. Richard Wolff. He's a professor of economics emeritus at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, visiting professor in the graduate program in international affairs at the New School University in New York City. He also teaches at the Brecht Forum in Manhattan and is the host of Economic Update. Welcome to Uprising, Dr. Wolff.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us. So what do you make of this new jobs report that is leading people to declare the U.S. economy turning into a jobs machine? What sort of jobs are we talking about, first of all?
Well, most of the jobs that were lost in the Great Recession of the last 7 years were jobs that were reasonably well paid, had a reasonable amount of security, benefits that went with them. And what's very stark about the change in this country is that the jobs that people are getting now, that you're reporting about, are overwhelmingly jobs with fewer benefits, less security, and often much lower pay. So you're not going to get the kind of stimulus that normally would be associated with lower unemployment, because we're not giving back to people who lost good jobs anything like what they had. And the net result is they're paid less, which means they can spend less, their lives become more pinched, and we see a continuation with the ups and downs of employment of an economy in a long-term decline in terms of the real standards of living of the people in the country.
So you think that this particular jobs report is not necessarily indicative of a long-term?
Absolutely. There is no way after the few months that we've had these good results to be all that excited about it. Give you an example. More people have left the labor market, have dropped out of even looking for a job than have been added in these recent months. One of the reasons the unemployment rate is down is the peculiar way this government counts unemployment. If you stop looking for a job, they consider you no longer unemployed, even if when talking to you, one would hear you're desperate for a job, you've gone back to being a housewife or a student or doing something not so legal in order to make a living. This is not good news. It looks like a reduction of unemployment, but the actual condition of our economy and of the people involved has deteriorated, not improved.
Now, some are making much of the fact that average hourly earnings have actually shown to have increased by a whopping 12 cents. But could that be at least hopeful? I mean, we're looking at essentially corporate America and industries deciding to rehire people they might have laid off at lower wages, and now maybe starting to feel like they can comfortably start to increase wages?
It's much too early to say. The long-term trend, and I'm talking 30 years, is for the real wages of America. The amount of money that people earn, adjusted for the prices they have to pay, is flat or declining. 2 or 3 months in which you get these tiny increases may make for good headlines because it can be put in a positive frame. But the basic condition of the American working people has gone absolutely nowhere. And at the same time, they become more productive. They produce more with better machines, more machines, computers. So workers are producing more and more for their employer. but the employer is giving them the flat same amount.
Right.
That's why we have an explosion of profits at the top, because we've set it up in such a way that all the improved productivity of our labor force accrues to the employer, none to the worker.
And yet people are also working harder than ever in terms of the hours that they're putting in. A lot
The pace of their work, that's right.
And corporations are being sued for all of the unpaid overtime wages that they aren't giving those workers.
By the way, one more dimension that people should keep in mind. You know, when people become unemployed, they are entitled for a while to unemployment insurance, but after a while, the government shut that off. Number two, when they haven't got that help, they start leaning on their savings, which they've used up. We can see that. Number three, they start begging and borrowing from their relatives and their families and their friends. When they have run out of that, there is nothing left other than welfare or worse conditions. Then they go back to work, willing to accept a much poorer job, much lower wage, because they've run out of any option. That's what we're seeing, people desperate. This is not a sign of an economic health. This is a sign of trouble and severe suffering that is expressed in a falling unemployment rate, which the press, the mainstream press, tries to position as great news, but it really isn't.